Hello and welcome to the 2024 Gundersen Health System's benefit video for open enrollment in November of 2023. My name is Michael Swartz, and I am a certified financial planner. I am a fee-only fiduciary here in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I specialize in working with medical professionals. I do not have a professional affiliation with Gundersen, but my wife Morgan does work there in the palliative department, and so if you see Morgan Swartz, the PA from palliative, tell her I say hi. So our family actually uses Gundersen's benefits, and I have a large number of clients who utilize these benefits as well. And so I'm in these benefits in depth every single year, running different scenarios for different families, and I decided to put together this video so that you could have a CFP's perspective on Gundersen's benefit offering. All right, as you can see, we'll be following the 2024 benefits guide pretty much to a T. We'll go through an introduction and talk about what's changing in the coming year. We'll discuss the medical plans in general, then move on to talking about the new dental coverage. We'll discuss three-letter accounts, HRAs, FSAs, and HSAs with a spreadsheet, as well as the health insurance plan comparison with a spreadsheet. Then we'll talk through those remaining benefits, the life, AD&D, the new disability policies, additional insurances, and those bells and whistles, and then the 401k as well, along with some closing commentary and an introduction into financial planning. All right, starting at the top, we've got what should look familiar, the 2024 benefits guide for open enrollment, again, November 1st through November 21st of 2023. Gundersen does a great job presenting their benefits. Honestly, we work with several medical professionals throughout the state of Wisconsin, and by far, Gundersen has one of the most well-presented and robust benefit packages that we've seen. I think they genuinely care about their employees, and their benefits reflect that. So if we scroll down to the changes that are occurring between 2023 and 2024, we can take a look at some of the updates. First and foremost, biggest change off the bat that you'll probably notice is the consumer-involved medical plan is going away. It's being replaced by a point-of-service plan. Additionally, that consumer-involved medical plan had a cost-share fund component to it. That is going away as well as Gundersen's contribution to any cost sharing, or what they're transferring the cost share fund to is actually called a health reimbursement account. Gundersen is no longer contributing to an HRA or a cost share fund under the new point of service plan. So I want to make that very clear. Now, any cost share fund balance will be transferred into an HRA for 2024, and you have to be on the point of service plan to utilize that HRA to have 50% of your medical expenses paid for. And that'll be a very specific point that we make when we're comparing the health insurance plans at the end of the video. Additionally, the high deductible plan will see a small bump in the deductible from $3,000 to $3,200 for individuals and from $6,000 to $6,400 for families. Not a significant difference. Additionally, Gundersen will be making health savings account contributions. Again, we'll spreadsheet all this. I love spreadsheets. We'll go in and actually show what this all means, but for now, changes to both the consumer-involved medical plan and high deductible plan. Biggest change being that consumer-involved medical plan is going away and being replaced by the point of service. Furthermore, on the changes, the dental plan looks like they have another option here. It's going to be a more basic dental plan with a smaller benefit. Gundersen will be contributing to health savings accounts again this year for those of you on the high deductible plan. Also, HSA contribution limits are going up. They went up from $3,850 to $4,150 for individuals and the $7,750 to $8,300 for families. This health savings account is a particularly valuable tool for those on the high deductible plan who are in higher income brackets. So federally, there is a great advantage to making HSA contributions if you're on a high deductible plan from a tax savings perspective. Again, we'll talk about that later in the video. From an income protection standpoint, Gundersen does offer supplemental life insurance, spousal life insurance, and dependent child life insurance. I believe what's new here under the disability insurance is formerly Gundersen offered this benefit that was paid for by Gundersen. My understanding here now is that employees will have the option to elect and pay for their disability insurance. We'll talk about that in detail. We'll go through some of these calculations and give you some commentary on whether or not you want to utilize those short and long-term disability benefits. Additional benefits, we call these the bells and whistles, a critical illness, hospital indemnity, and accident insurance. These are kind of like your AFLAC policies. They're not one of the core benefits, but they could be advantageous for certain people with very specific health events that they're anticipating. And of course, legal protection. I've never actually had a client use the legal side of things, but it is offered through Gundersen. All right, moving on to the health insurance plans, what Gundersen is calling medical coverage. Gundersen offers three distinct plans. There's an HMO plan. We call this the chronic illness plan. The new point of service plan that replaces the consumer involved medical plan. The point of service plan, we call this the acute illness plan. And then the high deductible plan is what we call the healthy plan. And we'll explore why. I'm sure it's pretty intuitive, but for those of you who don't love benefits as much as I do, we'll definitely explain why we call them that. Basically, how the plans work is that the HMO offers only in-network coverage and emergency services out of network. But you end up paying a fortune just to have the coverage. I believe it's around $6,000 a year, but then you have Cadillac coverage. So high expense up front with phenomenal insurance. The point of service plan is kind of that middle of the road package. Typically, we recommend this for people who have a known covered surgical event coming up or delivery, so someone having a baby. The point of service plan then offers both in-network and out-of-network coverage and the flex spending account. So when we get to those detailed comparisons, we'll show the difference between a flex spending account, a health reimbursement account, and a health savings account. Now, since we are here talking about it, I do want to point out this point of service plan is the only Gundersen offered health insurance plan that will leave you eligible to use the HRA funds that will be coming over from your cost share fund. Conversely, the high deductible healthcare plan is the only plan that will allow you to contribute to a health savings account. And so if you're on the HMO or the point of service, you are not eligible to contribute to a health savings account. On the high deductible plan, you are. And again, there's significant tax savings for those high income earners on the high deductible healthcare plan that we'll talk about. So when we get to the detailed comparison, we'll talk through what the premiums are, how the deductible works, how copays will work, as well as comparing the medical plans with a very specific example. All right, moving on to dental coverage now. I'm going to start by comparing the basic plan, the new offering, to the enhanced plan for individuals, and then we'll look at the same exact considerations for a family. But generally speaking, all these things are worth noting, whether you use the individual or family plan. So go ahead and just watch this straight through. We'll keep it to a few minutes. But to start out, the basic plan costs an individual $11 a month, and the enhanced plan costs $22 a month. It's exactly double. But under the basic plan, although this annual cost is $132, I do want to point out under the benefits portion that there is a $50 deductible. So it's not just $132, it will be $182 just to start utilizing this insurance. When you compare that to a $264 annual cost to the enhanced plan, it would only cost an individual $80 a year in excess of the basic plan to be on the enhanced plan. So that's very much worth noting, because the basic plan, it's not just half of the enhanced plan. While the individual annual maximum benefit is exactly half, what I do want to note here is under Checkup Plus, under the basic plan, all of your basic services, checkups, exams, those are going to count towards the individual annual maximum. They're going to get subtracted from this $1,000, whereas the enhanced plan is eligible for this Checkup Plus benefit, which does not take away from the $2,000 annual maximum benefit. So those annual checkups or every 6 months cleanings, those are going to count towards this annual benefit under the basic plan. They don't under the enhanced plan. So that is very much worth noting. Additionally, major services such as crowns, bridges, dentures, etc. are 80% covered under the enhanced plan, while they're only 50% covered under the basic plan. So for individuals who would like to use the basic plan, only go in and get your annual cleanings and exams or every 6 months. If you have to do anything more than that, you anticipate a cavity, anything like that, switch over to the enhanced plan. For that extra $80, you have access to a twice as large benefit pool, and you have additional coverage. And so in general, if you anticipate anything more than just the basic dental needs, the enhanced plan probably makes sense. Okay, with all those considerations in mind, we'll look at the family dental plans. The basic plan for a family is $36 per month, which is $432 annually. It's $65 a month to be on the enhanced plan, which is $780 annually. So about $350 more a year to be on the enhanced plan. But I think we need to offset that again by this $150 deductible that exists on the basic plan. So ultimately it costs you $200 a year more to be on the enhanced plan to have access to this doubled benefit pool that does not get subtracted by the basic checkups, routine exams, things of that nature, and you end up having greater coverage for the major services, plus especially for families with children, probably utilizing the orthodontic services at some point. Larger benefit pool, longer period for dependents to be on the enhanced plan. I think for that additional $200 for families, being on the enhanced plan probably makes sense. And so it would probably be my recommendation that any family who's utilizing this enhanced plan pay the extra $200 a year and have access to so much more coverage. All right, moving on to the 3-letter accounts. These are the HSAs, the HRAs, and the FSAs. So we're going to talk about how these can be utilized and the tax advantages of each. Gundersen does a pretty good job presenting the HSA and their benefits. They talk about how it compares to a 401k. They talk about their healthcare flex spending accounts and dependent care flex spending accounts, but they don't touch on the HRA. So I put together the spreadsheet to put each one side by side. All right, jumping into the spreadsheet. As I mentioned, Gundersen does a pretty good job presenting how to utilize each of these accounts in their benefits package, but I wanted to just lay them out side by side and provide some commentary on them. We will start with that HRA. So the health reimbursement account is the grandfathered funds from the cost share fund. This is a HRA health reimbursement account, and it will be used to cover 50% of your qualified medical expenses while you are on the point of service plan and only on the point of service plan. So that's that middle of the road plan. One thing of note here, the contribution limit for 2024 is $2,100, but that is irrelevant because HRA funds can only be provided by an employer. So you cannot contribute to an HRA. And since Gundersen has chosen not to contribute to the HRA, it's really irrelevant what the contribution limit is. I will point out here, though, Gundersen did make a change to the point of service plan over the consumer involved medical plan that offsets the contributions they used to make to the cost share fund. So they've cut your deductible in half. So while they're not making contributions to an HRA, they did do something within the insurance plan itself to offset that contribution. Moving on to the FSA, this is a flex spending account, but specifically a healthcare flex spending account. The next line down here you'll see is a dependent care FSA. This dependent care is very different. We are talking about a healthcare flex spending account first. This is typically used for acute healthcare expenses. The main reason for that, including dental and vision, but the main reason for that is it is employer owned, and then there's an annual rollover limit of $610. Now, $610 is in 2023. It's projected to be $640 in 2024, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. And so if you contribute up to this $3,200 maximum, you better know where you're spending that dollar. And if you don't, it is use it or lose it. Poof, it can go away at the end of the year, and it is subject to forfeiture over that rollover limit. And so be very cautious when using a healthcare flex spending account. Moving on to the dependent care FSA. So this is a clerical account. It is used for acute child care expenses, but essentially what you're going to do is take $5,000 worth of your income, pass it through to dependent care FSA, and take withdrawals against it for qualified child care expenses in the year. It is owned by Gundersen, and the IRS does not allow rollovers. One point to note here is that the dependent care FSA may impact child tax credits, so you should speak with a tax professional to make sure you're not forfeiting child tax credits by utilizing the dependent care FSA. As Swartz Financial Planning, we offer both tax planning and tax prep services. That means we can give you advice on taxes and file those taxes for you to make sure that you're getting all the information you need when you're electing which of these accounts to utilize. Now, moving on to the health savings account, the HSA. This is by far the most robust tax-favored account that the IRS has ever invented. Better than the IRA, better than the 401k. The health savings account is a personally owned asset. You can use it tax-free for qualified medical expenses, dental, and vision. And then you can also have kind of this get-out-of-jail-free card for retirement income as well. So the contribution limits in 2024 will be $4,150 for individuals or $8,300 for families. There's also a $1,000 catch-up provision for those over the age of 55, but you have to subtract out Gundersen's contribution. So if you're on the individual plan, you can't contribute $4,150 because Gundersen's putting $500 into your HSA, so you can only put in $3,650. On the family side, $8,300 gets reduced to $7,300 with Gundersen's $1,000 contribution. The other big note on the health savings account, that retirement income piece, you can pay for COBRA and retirement medical insurance premiums tax-free, as well as long-term care premiums with tax-free distributions. But if you wait until the age of 65, that 10% penalty is waived and you can take the HSA funds as taxable income in retirement as well. The key takeaways from the HSA. There is no forfeiture. You own the account under your Social Security number. It is triple tax deferred. That means money you put in is put in tax-free. The growth inside the account is tax-free. You can actually invest inside of an HSA, which is a phenomenal benefit. And all qualified distributions are tax-free as well. This is the only account in the world that does this. That's why it's the most robust planning tool, especially from a tax-favored accounts perspective, as it pertains to your health insurance plans. A few other quick notes from a financial planning perspective. So yes, that HRA is brand new. No one will be contributing to it. You can only take distributions while you're on that point of service plan, and it will pay for half your qualified medical expenses. I would want to confirm that dental and vision are covered by the HRA. Typically they are, but you have to submit a receipt to get that 50% payment. It will only be funded from a cost share fund transfer. Again, no one is contributing, neither you nor the employer. Gundersen owns it and it's probably subject to forfeiture. Now, when it comes to retirement planning, we found a very specific opportunity here. The HRA forfeiture is typically only relevant when you terminate employment and accept another position. Most employers will have retirement requirements for you to maintain eligibility and ownership of this HRA if you retire from the health system. So this is something I want to look into with HR. Ask them whether or not this HRA is something that you can take into retirement and what the eligibility requirements are for you to take it with you. For many of our retirement planning clients, the cost share fund was a very powerful planning tool for their retirement. We want to find out if that's still true for the HRA. On the healthcare FSA, you will only utilize this plan if you're on the HMO or point of service. Remember, if you're on that point of service, half your bills will already be covered. So be very cautious with how much you put into a healthcare FSA. And with a $0 deductible on the HMO plan, same conversation. Do not overfund your FSA. It is subject to forfeiture. You have to define how much you're putting in at open enrollment. This is another key feature. Open enrollment elections mean on December 31st, you're locked in with how much you're putting in there, and you better use it up in the calendar year. Otherwise, it will be forfeited. Again, Gundersen owns this account, and it is subject to forfeiture. On the dependent care FSA, basically, if you have $5,000 worth of child care expenses, it probably makes sense to pay for these by untaxing those dollars and taking tax-free distributions. One point on the forfeiture, it may impact child tax credits. So again, speak with a tax professional. We do all of that for our clients. We run that analysis while we're doing their financial plan. We're filing and prepping their taxes as well. So talk to somebody about not forfeiting your child care tax credit if you're utilizing a dependent care FSA. And finally, again, I just want to emphasize how valuable this health savings account is. You must be on the high deductible plan to use it, but you can take distributions even if you are no longer on the high deductible healthcare plan. So you can get on it for 1 year, max it out, get those tax savings, and then jump right back on a better plan if needed. Again, qualified medical expenses, dental, vision, and these retirement distribution portions that we talked about, the COBRA, insurance premiums, long-term care premiums. And if you get to age 65 and that 10% penalty goes away, you can distribute from an HSA for taxable income. Final note here on the HSA, as long as you're on a high deductible plan, you can contribute. You don't have to lock in your election at open enrollment. So you can contribute on January 1st or December 30th. That is a very major consideration. You're not locked into how much you're putting in there. And finally, with Gundersen's $500 or $1,000 contribution to the HSA and you being the outright owner and no forfeiture, this HSA is probably the place to start looking at your health insurance. There are so many benefits to it, particularly if you're in these higher federal tax brackets. So the benefits of untaxing dollars is much better at a 32 or 35% tax bracket than it is even at a 22 or 24%. So for high income earners, it is very valuable to look at this and say, how much am I actually saving in taxes by utilizing an HSA? And with that, we can compare these health insurance plans. Okay, now that I've bored you to death with HRAs, FSAs, and HSAs, we're going to compare the health insurance plans. I'm just going to take the monthly premium, annualize it, utilize these different tax-favored accounts to compare these three type of plans, and ultimately send you home with the conclusion. Now, we'll use the individual policies to illustrate this, but I will jump over to the family plan as well, just to illustrate, the beginning expenses and some of these tax-favored accounts. And so on the single plan itself, the monthly premium for the high deductible healthcare plan is $14, which is $168 annually, and Gundersen's going to make that $500 HSA contribution. On the point of service plan, you will have the health reimbursement account coming from the cost share fund, probably, as well as the opportunity to contribute to a healthcare FSA. Those $86 premiums translate to about $1,000 in annual cost just to have the insurance. And on the HMO plan, only the healthcare FSA eligible is $185 a month and costs over $2,000 a year to own. So right off the bat, on January 1st, what happens to us when we own these insurance policies? Well, on the high deductible healthcare plan, you are spending $168 to own the insurance, but you get a $500 HSA contribution, and so you are net ahead $332 at the start of the year. Since Gundersen is not making any contributions to HRAs or FSAs, on the point of service plan, you are out $1,000 just for the cost of owning the insurance, and there is no cost share fund contribution, so your costs are exactly equal to what you're paying to own the insurance. Same thing with the HMO plan. Cost is $2,200, no contributions. You're out $2,200 just to start the year. Now, how do we start utilizing these tax advantage accounts? Well, let's say in the plan year, you're on the high deductible healthcare plan, you have access to an HSA, and you max it out as an individual. That $4,150 minus the $500 Gundersen contribution is $3,650. Assuming you are in the 24% federal and 5.3% state tax brackets, you will get an approximately 30% refund on your taxes. And for doing that, you get an $1,100 net benefit for having this insurance and utilizing the health savings account. So to start the year, if you receive Gundersen's $500 contribution as well as maxing out your own personally funded HSA, you will start the year $1,400 ahead just for having a high deductible healthcare plan and utilizing the HSA. Conversely, with an FSA, I don't think we want to put the full $3,200 in there. We've talked about why with that lower deductible and 50% of those benefits coming from the cost share fund and HRA, it's going to be very difficult to use these FSA funds. So let's say at open enrollment you elect $1,000. That 30% benefit is only about a $300 difference between what you're paying and the tax benefit, and so you're still net behind $740 to start the year. Same thing with the HMO plan. Let's say you put $500 into that healthcare FSA just for something. You know it's protected by that rollover limit, and so you do get a small benefit, but only about $150. Well, we're still on about $2,000 to start the year. So between the HMO plan and that Cadillac coverage and the high deductible healthcare plan, there is a $3,400 difference just on how you start the year and fund these tax favored accounts. And now we can start comparing healthcare expenses. So if you have a blank slate, no healthcare expenses for the entire year and no cost share fund or HRA balance, we can see you have either a $2,000 or $3,400 benefit to you for electing that high deductible healthcare plan. And that's why we tell people start by looking at the high deductible healthcare plan. Thousands of dollars are on the table just based on how you navigate your health insurance plan. That's why we're spending a lot of time on it. Now, if you put money into this flex spending account and you have health reimbursement account funds, let's say even $1,500, now we can start to compare the point of service plan to the high deductible healthcare plan as we start having healthcare expenses. So let's say we're going to have $1,000 in healthcare expenses. Which plan is going to be better, the point of service plan or the high deductible healthcare plan? Interestingly enough, you are still $1,600 better off being on the high deductible healthcare plan, even with $1,000 in medical expenses. That break even is somewhere between $2,500, see the difference here, about $300, and $3,000. Now we cross over. So as soon as we have about $3,000 in healthcare expenses, that point of service plan is going to be the least expensive way to pay for your health insurance coverage. Now your health insurance is working for you at this point. You had $3,000 in healthcare expenses, but you've only paid about $1,500 to have the insurance. So that's a win. But as we climb into higher healthcare expenses, and it actually is about up to that $15,000 mark, you are still better off on the point of service plan than you would be on the HMO, as long as you have an HRA balance. As soon as you use up those HRA funds, let's take those out. There's your crossover to be on the HMO plan. So as long as you have a cost share fund balance in that HRA, let's put that back in, $1,500, I can climb this number up to $100,000, and it is still to your benefit to be on the point of service plan. So make that known. on the point of service plan. Stay on the point of service plan as long as you have a cost share fund balance. It is still better than paying so much money to be on the HMO plan. The HMO plan is extremely expensive to own. That's the point. You are $2,000 behind at the start of the year. So as long as you have an HRA balance, the point of service plan will be less expensive overall. Even though it feels like you're footing the bill for some of those medical bills, you need to go in and do this total cost analysis. And so let's take those HRA funds out again. Well, now it's better to be on the HMO plan, but only very, very little. So only $150 difference between the HMO and the point of service plan. So I would say as long as you have cost share fund balance at all, even if it's $100, okay, $200, there's our break even. So as long as you have $200 in your HRA, go ahead and utilize that point of service plan over the HMO plan. So my takeaway for you would be this. If you have less than $2,500 in healthcare expenses, being on that high deductible healthcare plan with an HSA is probably your best option, but the tax brackets matter. That 30% tax savings that we see up here is very different if you guys are only earning up into the 12% tax bracket federally, and very different if you're up into that 32% tax bracket. So very, very critical point here, tax brackets matter. If you're in between $2,500 and $15,000, you have to decide between the high deductible healthcare plan and point of service, but those cost share fund and HRA balances matter. Again, $200 or more, that point of service plan is still better than the HMO, but you got to know, am I using an HSA or an HRA to offset those medical bills? That's where we really need to get granular. And so I can't illustrate all this, but if you're over $15,000, utilize the HMO so long as there's no cost share fund or HRA balance. So that's how I would look at these healthcare plans. Again, it might be a little bit enlightening to see that the high deductible healthcare plan is the right plan to be on, even if you have some medical expenses. So it is worth, quote, taking that risk and having that higher deductible to have those benefits change for you on the health savings account specifically. And if we look at that from a family perspective, some of these numbers actually are more eye-opening. We'll just do net of net. We've got our monthly annual premiums, Gundersen's $1,000 contribution. On January 1st, you start the year $450 ahead on the high deductible healthcare plan. But to be on that point of service plan, you start $3,200 behind. That's almost $3,700 difference. And only as we start to climb into very significant medical bills does it make sense to be on that point of service plan or that HMO plan. So again, sharpen the pencil on this, look at your HSA contributions, and you can see here there is an almost $5,000 benefit, a $5,000 head start on health insurance expenses if you max out your HSA, even if you're maxing out these FSAs at $3,200 a year for 2024. So this is a very, very significant point here. Start with the high deductible healthcare plan and then work your way back into these other healthcare plans as you're comparing expenses. And once again, we do this analysis for all of our clients. If you have questions about financial planning and how your health insurance plans coordinate with your overall benefits, please let me know and we will go through this with you. But the key takeaway here is that high deductible healthcare plan with the HSA is absolutely a great starting point. So before we get back into the benefits, I will reiterate it one more time. Start by exploring the high deductible healthcare plan and utilizing that HSA. You do have to be on that high deductible healthcare plan, but you can use it for qualified medical expenses, dental, vision, and all of those retirement distribution benefits that we talked about. You can contribute, Gundersen contributes, and ultimately you are the owner. So this high deductible healthcare plan with the HSA, it's extremely robust and highly advantageous to be on. All right, jumping back into the benefits real quick. We are now looking at life, accidental death, and dismemberment insurance. A couple of things to note here on the life insurance. Gundersen offers 1.5 times your annual earnings, up to $250,000 in paid life insurance. However, it's worth noting here, it used to be $50,000 because that's the amount that the IRS allows employers to pay for without imputed income. So imputed income is Gundersen paying premiums for your life insurance over and above a $50,000 death benefit. You owe the taxes on that, but you pay pennies on the dollar to get additional life insurance. So this is a very generous benefit that Gundersen offers, and you pay a fraction of the cost to get additional life insurance. So take all you get, pay the taxes on the imputed income, and appreciate Gundersen for offering a really cool life insurance policy for you. They do offer supplemental life both for you and accidental death and dismemberment. There is evidence of insurability required, which tells me that since you have to prove that you're insurable anyway, it's probably more inexpensive for you to go out and get your own term life insurance policy. As a fee-only fiduciary, I cannot sell life insurance policies. I can't collect commissions. It's a choice we made professionally not to sell insurances, but we do have fiduciary insurance advisors who could help you get very inexpensive term life insurance without the sales pitch. And so we have relationships that we could refer you to if you'd like to get some term life insurance. I would not recommend getting it through the group policies. It's just typically more expensive. Same thing with accidental death and dismemberment. The only time we recommend this is if you are not able to provide any form of evidence of insurability. Accidental death and dismemberment will not pay a benefit if it is a health-related death. Most of the time, it has to be an accident. And so getting this to cover something like a terminal illness probably isn't the best way to go either. So both the group supplemental life and the accidental death and dismemberment are typically not something that we recommend to clients. Same thing with spousal supplemental life and accidental death and dismemberment. It's typically not cost effective to carry these policies. Now, the dependent child life insurance may be a benefit you would want to explore because for the dependents, there is no evidence of insurability requirement. So if you have a child who is healthy, a term life insurance policy may be a better option for them. But if they have health considerations, this $20,000 dependent child life insurance policy may be of benefit to you if your child has elevated health risks. Moving on to the short-term disability benefits policies. This is going to be a relatively straightforward conversation. We'll make a few notes. I've actually added some text into the benefits, so all of the bold text is from me, not part of the Gundersen benefits themselves. And to start out, here's how a short-term disability benefit policy would work. First, if you've ever been denied before, there will be evidence of insurability required. If you've never been denied coverage before, you can opt into this coverage and you don't have to go through evidence of insurability. But if you were to receive this disability benefit, you would first have to have 2 weeks of unpaid benefit period. This is called a waiting period. And then you would receive 60% of your basic annual earnings up to that $1,000 threshold for 75 days or 10.7 weeks. The reason this 10.7 weeks is relevant is because the maximum benefit you could receive is $1,000 a week up to that 75-day limit, and so there's a maximum benefit on short-term disability of $10,700. How do you max out that benefit? Since it's 60% of your pay, you would have to make approximately $87,000 a year. I actually back calculated this to figure out what the annual salary would be to max out the short-term disability benefit, and it ends up being right around $87,000. So if we follow this math down through, we see that for coverage for $87,000 in salary or more, it will cost you $41.40 per month or $496.80 annually. I think this was intentional. I think it's around $500 to make it easier for you to make this decision. So for $500 a year, does it make sense for you to have access to a $10,700 benefit pool on the short-term disability front if you're making over $87,000 a year? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. So when we evaluate the short-term disability, the questions are, what are our fixed expenses? Do we have a mortgage and student loans that we're paying on a monthly basis and we're dependent on our monthly income that a short-term disability would derail our financial plan? If we're in our later years and we can self-insure, do we need to have access to this benefit to pay some of these fixed expenses that we have, or do we have an emergency fund set aside that we could tap into in lieu of using a short-term disability policy and saving that $500 a year elsewhere? These are the questions that I'd be asking. Additionally, if you're nearing retirement and you have health concerns, if there's a higher likelihood that you would utilize this short-term disability benefit, that may tip the scales in favor of electing this coverage. So a lot of things to consider here. If you have a known short-term disability event likely in the near future, absolutely elect this policy. Otherwise, do the math on it and decide whether or not it works for you, or hire a financial planning team to give you individualized advice on this short-term disability benefit, because it probably is a very case-by-case basis. Moving on to long-term disability. So as you recall, the short-term disability had a 14-day waiting period and 75-day benefit period. In total, that's 89 days that are covered under the short-term disability policy. Long-term disability is going to pick up right where short-term leaves off. After 90 consecutive days of a disabling event, long-term disability will start paying you a benefit. This benefit is capped at 60% of basic earnings up to $6,000 a month until you reach age 65 or you are no longer disabled. So this could have a very large benefit pool if you were to claim on a long-term disability policy. Again, the 90-day waiting period exists, but after that, you could receive this benefit for an extremely extended period of time. So what does the math tell us about whether or not to elect this policy? Well, that $6,000 a month maximum benefit is capped on a $120,000 salary. So if you make $120,000 or more, you will not be eligible to receive more than $6,000 per month in monthly benefit from a long-term disability policy, which means following the math, divided by 100 and multiplied by this 41-cent multiplier, the maximum that you could pay for long-term disability insurance is $24.60 per month, or $295.20 per year. So for less than $300 a year, you could have a long-term disability policy in place. I think it would be really difficult to find a scenario where paying for this policy would not be advantageous. So almost unanimously and across the board, I would recommend that my clients get this long-term disability policy. Again, $300 a year to a benefit pool that would pay to age 65, $6,000 a month. Seems like a no-brainer. Almost absolutely get that long-term disability policy on you, unless you have a very strong and compelling reason not to elect this coverage. And a final note on the long-term disability insurance, you should absolutely explore owning a personally owned long-term disability insurance policy. Main reason for that, 60% salary replacement is typically not enough to ensure your long-term financial plan. So in the event you have a long-term disability, you will no longer be making 401k contributions. You will only be receiving 60% of your income, and typically with a long-term disability event, you have higher expenses. And so in general, it is a very good idea to explore a personally owned long-term disability policy on top of the employer-offered benefit. So once again, as a fiduciary planner, I do not get paid on insurance. I do not get paid to recommend insurance, but oftentimes it is a very good idea, and this is echoed by the white coat investor, to have a long-term disability policy owned personally on yourself on top of the Gundersen benefit. On the additional insurances front, I will just say this. The reason that insurance companies offer this is because they typically collect more premiums than they pay out in benefits. So statistically speaking, to the broad audience, it probably doesn't make sense to pay for this insurance. However, if you have specific reasons to pick this up, you have a large family, you're just a little bit clumsy, and there's a higher than normal possibility that you would use this policy, you may consider it, but in general, it does not make financial sense to pick up these bells and whistles policies. I'm happy to go through this with anyone on an individual basis to talk about it. There are ways that you can win at this, but it's a little bit like playing pull tabs at the bar. Odds are you won't win in the long run if you continue to purchase these policies, but there is a chance you could win. Critical illness, on the other hand, if you do have a pre-existing condition that would lend itself to a potential reoccurrence of a critical illness as defined, it may make sense to pick this one up, especially for those later in their career. And so that might be worth considering. And then once again, with the hospital indemnity insurance, probably doesn't make sense to pick up this benefit. If you look here, employee only would cost $25 a month, or employee plus family closer to $60. So it ends up being somewhere between $300 and $700 a year. It may make sense for expecting mothers to pay for an employee only policy, spend $300 on this, and then jump down to the newborn care. For each day of confinement to a hospital postnatal, you could have $200 per day for up to 2 days. So pay $300 at the start of the year, probably receive $200 times 2 is $400 the following year. You can make $100 by carrying this type of policy, but in general, once again, these policies aren't worth keeping on a general basis. Finally, identity theft protection and legal. I've never had a client use these, but just be aware these are offered, and if something does come up, there is a chance that you could have these benefits utilized. Same thing with pet insurance. We typically don't recommend it. I would have a specific question for equestrian or horse coverage if they're considered pets versus farm animals. If that's your specific situation, I would shoot an email to HR because those bills can get expensive quickly. But unless you have a large number of geriatric animals, I probably wouldn't recommend the pet insurance either. The math just doesn't work out on that. So with that, we'll jump into the 401k plan. Okay, looking at Gundersen's 401k plan now. As you guys know, it's offered through One America. A couple things to note. So, during your pay period, if you contribute 3%, you'll get that 3% match. You get half of the next 2, so you do 5, they'll match 4. One specific note here I think is, once again, generous, is that you are always 100% vested in both what you put in and the matching contributions. The Gundersen profit share, on the other hand, or what they call the base contribution, you do have a years of service vesting schedule. It's graded. And so after 6 years, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So if you've been there for 6 years, every time Gundersen puts a profit share into your retirement account, it's 100% yours. If you're looking for specific allocation advice, so what you're actually invested in or whether you should be contributing to Roth or traditional, that is an in-depth financial planning question. Again, as a CFP, I'd be happy to sit down and answer that with you, run the math on it, talk about financial planning in general. But as a whole, right, just from a high level, this 401k plan is very generously funded by Gundersen. Now, as far as managing your own 401k goes, once again, I'm happy to talk about how we would recommend investing money. But once again, you do that through the One America portal online, and they just make a special note here, not through Workday. All right, we made it. We are finally here in the appendix. As you can see, there are thousands and thousands of dollars in value tucked among these benefits and how we utilize them, whether it's the Checkup Plus plan on the dental, the tax favored accounts like the HRA, HSA, and FSA, even the 401k, how we contribute, the vesting, whether it's traditional or Roth, and the allocation itself. These are just part of the benefits that your employer provides at Gundersen. I would invite you to take a look at what financial planning covers as well. I'll put up a PDF. Not only do we analyze net worth and cash flow, we take a look at retirement planning. So if you're getting ready to retire, who better to work with than a fee-only fiduciary who specializes in working with medical professionals here in La Crosse? Additionally, we look at investment planning and allocation, insurance planning. On that tax front, once again, not only do we offer tax advice, we actually file taxes for our clients, and you can also take a look at estate planning with us as well. So if you're looking for a single source point of contact, a trusted contact to help you with financial efficiencies, please reach out. I'll put my contact info here. It's mswartz@laxfp.com. And once again, my name is Michael Swartz. I am a certified financial planner, a fee-only fiduciary, and I specialize in working with healthcare professionals here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. We'll see you in next year's video if we don't see you sooner for a meeting. Take care.